There's widespread surprise that during the autumn, when Carillion was hemorrhaging cash, that your department awarded a very big HS2 contract to a consortium that included Carillion.
Well, I think the important thing about the HS2 work, firstly, there is no direct contract with Carillion itself. Carillion was part of a consortium that won a major contract. The terms of that contract require the other partners to take over the work if one of them falls to one side, which is what's happened. That work is continuing. There will be no financial impact. There will be no timetable impact. And in terms of the staff working on the project, they will carry on working on the project. We're even sorting out that the apprenticeships being done by the Carillion young people are migrating to one of the other firms in the consortium.
You are 100% confident that the demise of Carillion will have absolutely no impact on the ability of that consortium to deliver what they've promised?
The HS2 team is absolutely clear. Their contract is with a consortium of companies, not with Carillion itself. That the other companies are contracted to take over responsibility for that work. That's already happening. The staff are migrating over. The apprentices are migrating over. We've made sure that happens. The HS2 project, either in time terms or in financial terms, will not be affected at all by what is a tragic collapse of Carillion.
But there are inevitably risks to a consortium when one of its leading members goes bust. Why didn't the government know how serious the problem was for Carillion? I mean, let's be absolutely clear. Bloomberg, Reuters, in November were very loudly saying banks were already writing off loans to this company. Why didn't the government know?
Well, I mean, it's been clear for some time that Carillion's had issues, but many construction firms have had issues over the years. HS2 did not have a contract on this project with a single company. It contracts with consortia. It does so on the basis that the whole consortia, the whole joint venture, is responsible for delivering the project. From our point of view, the judgment has to be, is the contract intact? Will the work be done? It's not for government and it's not for HS2 to exclude firms, possibly pushing them under because of the impact on their business. Arguably illegal to do so because there's no legal reason to exclude them. What we just have to do is make sure that the contract's deliverable, there's no financial cost, that we make sure the staff are covered, and in all cases the right due diligence was done. There will be no impact of this tragic loss of Carillion on the HS2 project.
Well, I'm sorry to disagree with you, but lawyers tell me there's a totally legal basis for the government to exclude as a bidder a business that is in trouble.
There's no legal basis for excluding a consortium made up of companies that have done nothing wrong and continuing to deliver important work.
But one of the companies was in dire straits.
Well, one of the companies had issued a profits warning.
No, but more than that. No, worse than that. It was in the process of issuing 3 profits warnings, and it was hemorrhaging cash, and its banks knew that they were hemorrhaging cash, and the city were told that it was hemorrhaging cash.
I think you got your time wrong. We're talking about the HS2 contract was last summer. It was just after, literally days after the profit warning was issued by Carillion. There was no direct contract. There is no direct contract with Carillion. It's with a consortium of businesses who are jointly and severally liable for delivering the work, and that work's carrying on. As we sit here today, that work is carrying on.
Network Rail, of course, did award substantial contracts to Carillion at a time when, as I say, the banks themselves knew they weren't going to be repaid. Why on earth did Network Rail do that?
Well, Carillion are an integral part, or were an integral part of the work that Network Rail does. This is, of course, not something that ministers have any involvement in. Network Rail does the contracting entirely out with the involvement of government.
But you are the responsible department.
We are, and Network Rail have been very quick to make sure that the projects affected will continue. They are working to make sure that staff carry on the same projects. They're working to make sure, to be absolutely clear, that subcontractors will be able to carry on and will be certain to be paid. There will be a few issues around the transition, but Network Rail has been preparing for this possibility, is in good shape, and I'm confident will continue to deliver going forwards.
Have you had robust conversations with Network Rail about how they made the mistake in awarding these contracts to Carillion?
Well, I've talked to Network Rail about this, and I'm confident they have got good arrangements in place to keep projects going, projects that are substantially completed. These are projects that in many cases are very nearly completed. Carillion have been doing extensive work across the whole rail network for years. Network Rail are in the process of migrating that work to other suppliers and some of it in-house. I'm confident that they're doing that well. And the important thing is they're working to make sure that staff are certain going forward that they will be paid, and subcontractors are certain going forward that they will be paid.
On the wider issue for government, are you concerned that, frankly, officials and ministers were simply not kept in the picture about how bad it was at Carillion?
Well, I think some of the stuff that's coming out now about Carillion is very concerning, but we have been monitoring the situation for months. That is why
were they
when
lying
the contract,
to you?
Well, when we awarded the contract, when HS2 awarded the contract last summer, a lot of work was done to make sure that if Carillion ran into problems, then the contract was covered, and that's what's happened. Now, over the years, there have been many UK construction firms that have had ups and downs and issued profit warnings, and they've come through those and continue to deliver excellent work. What we have to make sure is that we look after the interests of the taxpayer, we look after the interests of those projects, we make sure the projects continue, and we work to hope that British businesses that run into difficult times pull through and recover and carry on doing good work.
But in the statement that was given to the court on Monday when it went into liquidation, the company finally disclosed that its debts had ballooned to 3 billion. It had less than 30 million quid in available cash, and its net value, I mean, it's anybody's guess, but it looks to be quite close to nil. Why wasn't the government aware that such an important supplier was going down the Swanee spectacularly?
Well, there are clearly issues, and that's why Greg Clark has said that he is ordering investigations into what's happened. That is right and proper. There are some governance investigations that need to happen. Within the transport arena, though, with HS2, there was no direct contract with Carillion itself. There was a contract with a consortium that will do the work going forward. Within the railways and indeed within Highways England, work is already taking place to migrate to other suppliers to make sure that there is no hiatus in the work being done. I'm very confident there is a smooth transition. People do not need to be worried that investment projects going forward are going to be derailed by what's happened.
Finally, businesses connected to Carillion are facing significant losses. Thousands of workers are fearful about whether they're going to be paid, whether they're going to keep their jobs. Should there be prosecutions of those responsible?
Well, yeah, it's quite clear that as the investigations go forward, if people have behaved outside the law, of course there should be prosecutions. My message, though, to those who have been working for Carillion on the Highways England projects is that the money will be there to pay you. The subcontractors, staff will be paid going forward on those projects. It's important that they carry on working on those projects on the sites around the country. Network Rail is working to make sure that staff will be paid going forward and that suppliers will be able to be confident they can carry on working on those projects and being paid. So a lot of work's taking place in all the different parts of the transport system affected by this to make sure the financial impact and the operational impact is as little as possible.
And finally, you're absolutely clear that there are no lessons for the Department for Transport from any of this?
Well, I think the lesson that we have to make sure, and I think HS2 did it well this time, they contracted a consortium. They contracted a consortium that was equally responsible for delivering the contract. That consortium is now taking over the rest of the work, the Carillion part of the work, even to the point of taking on the apprentices that Carillion had on their books before. We need to make sure, after this, that we absolutely have a contracting process going forward that ensures that we are covered if something goes wrong. We can never, as government, guarantee that every business will always do well all of the time. What we can do is make sure that we do everything we can to cover the taxpayer, to cover people working on the projects. That's what we've done this time, and we'll learn lessons this time to see what more we can do if, God forbid, this should happen in future.
Are you still confident that private businesses like Carillion are appropriate to be providing vital public infrastructure and vital public services?
I'm very clear. I don't think government should suddenly start to create a giant construction firm of its own and to build its own mega projects. I mean, nobody does that anywhere in the world. There will undoubtedly be questions asked across other parts of government where services are being delivered on a day-by-day basis. But without the private sector, we would lose a flow of investment into our infrastructure, into the services we provide. Just on our railways, it is the private sector that is buying hundreds and hundreds and thousands of new trains all around the network. That would disappear if there were no private companies involved. So the idea that somehow government can take over and build all these projects and spend all the money and do everything that needs to be done, I think is a nonsense.
And have your colleagues shared with you their concerns about other providers of services, Cabinet Office monitoring Interserve, for example?
I'm not aware within the transport area today of any other firm that is doing work of the kind Carillion was doing, about which there are question marks.
Secretary of State, very good to see you.
You're welcome.